The gym at Elevate Fitness was Maya's sanctuary. She'd worked there for 4 years, starting as a regular member, then convincing the owner to take a chance on her after she earned her personal training certification. The walls were exposed brick, the equipment was top tier, and the energy was always electric. But what Maya loved most was the community. Every regular had a story, and most of them had trusted her with their fitness journeys. This Wednesday morning was like any other. Maya had 3 clients scheduled, and the first was already waiting. Marcus Williams, 73, retired accountant, widower of 8 years. He came in at 6:15 a.m. 3 times a week, never missed a session, and had become something close to a friend over the past 18 months of training. "Morning, Marcus," Maya called out as she set down her water bottle and grabbed her training notebook. "How are you feeling today?" Marcus was already at the bench press station, loading 95 pounds on the bar, about right for his current strength level. He had kind eyes, the type that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, which was often. Since his wife had passed, the gym had become as much about his mental health as his physical health. He'd told Maya once that these sessions gave him a reason to get out of bed on days when grief felt heavier than gravity. "Ready to work," Marcus said, settling onto the bench. "But I'll be honest, my left shoulder's been a little tight. That okay to push through?" Maya moved to the head of the bench, positioning herself to spot him if needed. This was the thing most people didn't understand about personal training. It wasn't just about counting reps or yelling motivational cliches. It was about listening. It was about caring enough to notice when someone was holding tension in their neck or favoring one side. "We'll warm up extra on that side and modify if it doesn't loosen up," Maya said. "No pushing through pain. Remember, we're training for longevity, not a show." Marcus nodded and began his first set. Maya watched his form carefully. His elbows were tracking slightly inward, a common compensation pattern. She waited until he was halfway through the set, then moved in, her hand positioned lightly on his upper back. "Elbows a touch wider," she instructed gently, her voice warm and encouraging. "Feel the difference." "Oh yeah," Marcus grunted, adjusting. "That's better." They fell into their rhythm. Maya counted out reps, offered encouragement, made minor form adjustments. This was what she lived for, that moment when someone discovered they were stronger than they thought, when doubt transformed into determination. Marcus completed 10 solid reps, and Maya felt that familiar swell of pride. "Excellent," she said as he racked the weight. "That was perfect form. How's the shoulder?" "Good, that adjustment helped." Marcus sat up, breathing a little harder than usual. "You know, Maya, I was telling my daughter about you. She thinks I should be coaching other people's kids the way you help me, said you have a gift." Maya smiled, feeling warmth in her chest. "Your daughter sounds smart. You're easy to coach. You actually listen." They were between sets, Maya jotting a note in her training log when the gym's rhythm shifted. There was no specific sound or announcement. It was just the way a space changes when someone walks in with bad energy. Maya didn't look up immediately, but she felt it, that sudden tension that makes your skin prickle. Christine Ashford had a membership at Elevate Fitness, though her attendance was irregular and her actual training was non-existent. Mostly, she came to be seen. She was the type who wore matching designer workout sets, never appeared to sweat, and spent more time on her phone in the lounge area than on any machine. Maya had never trained her, though Christine had made a point of approaching her once in the locker room to ask if Maya's box braids were authentic, because she'd been thinking about getting some. This morning, Christine was in a mood. Maya could sense it in the aggressive click of her expensive sneakers across the gym floor, in the tightness around her eyes. She was heading straight for the weights section, directly toward Maya and Marcus. Marcus was sitting on the bench, catching his breath. He hadn't noticed Christine yet. Maya was about to suggest they move to the next exercise when Christine appeared at the edge of the free weights area, her phone in one hand, her face arranged in an expression of mock concern that made Maya's stomach tighten. "Excuse me," Christine said loudly, directing her words not at Maya but at the gym at large. "Is anyone else concerned about what's happening here?" Maya looked up. Their eyes met for a second, and in that moment she knew exactly what Christine was implying, and the injustice of it hit her like a physical blow. She was a professional, she was doing her job, and yet. "Is there something I can help you with?" Maya asked, keeping her voice level professional. She already knew the answer wasn't going to be reasonable. "I'm just wondering," Christine said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "why you're touching an older gentleman without his explicit consent. I mean, in today's world, you'd think people would be more careful about boundaries, wouldn't you? The gym went quiet. Maya watched as heads turned. She could feel everyone processing what Christine had just insinuated, the ugly suggestion beneath her words. The implication wasn't just inappropriate, it was a specific kind of dangerous, the kind that had real consequences for people who looked like her. Marcus sat up straighter, his confusion evident. "She's my trainer," he said, his voice defensive. "She's helping me with my form." "I'm sure she is," Christine said, her tone suggesting she believed absolutely nothing of the sort. She held up her phone. "I hope you don't mind, I got some pictures, just in case there's any question later about what was happening here." "Put the phone down," Maya said quietly, but her voice had steel in it now. She could feel heat in her chest, that dangerous heat that came from being misunderstood, mislabeled, and maligned for simply existing in a space and doing her job. "I'm just documenting," Christine said, still holding the phone up. "For your protection, really. Wouldn't want there to be any misunderstanding about what you were doing with this gentleman." "I'm documenting you," said a voice from across the gym. Tony, one of the regulars, tall white man in his 50s, had stopped his workout. "And I'm reporting this to management. Now put the phone away." The tension was escalating now, that invisible line being crossed. Other people were gathering, not approaching, but watching. The gym owner, Derek, hadn't arrived yet. It was just the morning staff and the trainers and a couple of early risers who'd been minding their own business until Christine had decided to make a scene. "I'm not doing anything wrong," Christine insisted, but her voice had taken on a sharper pitch. She was scanning the gym, looking for allies and finding none. "I'm just concerned about—" "You're being racist," Maya said flatly. She looked directly at Christine, her voice calm but final. "You saw a black woman helping an elderly white man and your immediate assumption was inappropriate. That's racism. That's what's happening here, and everyone saw it." Christine's face flushed deeply. For a moment she sputtered, some excuse forming on her lips, but there was no recovering from this. The accusation hung in the air like a challenge, and she didn't have the ground to stand on to refute it. She turned on her heel, still clutching her phone, and walked toward the locker room, her spine rigid. The gym slowly returned to its normal rhythm, though the energy remained fractured. Marcus touched Maya's shoulder gently. "I'm sorry," he said, and he meant it. "That wasn't right." "Not your fault," Maya said, though her hands were shaking slightly as she set down her training notebook. "Let's take a 5-minute break, okay? Get some water." She moved to the water cooler, her mind spinning. Her training certificate hung on the wall. Her credentials were solid. And yet, in 30 seconds, a stranger had managed to make her question her own presence in a space where she worked, where she belonged. The thing was, incidents like this had happened before. Not at this intensity, but the smaller versions, the dismissiveness, the double takes, the assumptions. Maya had learned to navigate them, to let them roll off her back when possible. But this was different. This was public. This was witnessed. And this was going to matter. Derek arrived at the gym an hour later, after the morning rush. He went straight to Maya, who was between clients, sitting in the office reviewing training programs. "I heard what happened," Derek said without preamble. "From 3 different people, I want to hear your version." Maya told him. She kept it factual, unemotional, just the facts. Derek's expression grew darker as she spoke. "This is unacceptable," he said when she finished. "And it's not the first time Christine has made staff uncomfortable. I'm going to review her membership. There are standards for behavior in this space, and what she did was a violation." "Thank you," Maya said, and she meant it, but the relief she felt was limited. Derek's support mattered, but it wouldn't protect her from the next Christine. And there would be a next Christine. There was always a next Christine. "You're one of the best trainers I have," Derek continued. "You know that, right? Your clients love you. The results you get are incredible. Don't let this shake that." "I won't," Maya said, though she wasn't entirely sure that was true. Something had shifted inside her. A small seed of doubt had been planted, and she knew from experience that seeds like that could grow. That night at home in her small apartment in Brooklyn, Maya sat on her couch with her laptop. She pulled up the Elevate Fitness Instagram page, scrolling through the community photos. There she was, in several pictures with clients, Marcus included. Smiling, professional, real. Her phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. "I want you to know that I don't believe for one second what that woman was implying. You're a professional, and I trust you completely." I've already told Derek that if anything happens with my membership or your position because of her stupidity, I'm leaving the gym. Maya smiled despite herself. Good people existed. They just had to work so much harder to be noticed than bad people did. But as she set her phone down, she found herself thinking about Christine, about the fear that had motivated that outburst, the kind of fear that made people lash out at innocent people. Christine wasn't evil, probably. She was just afraid. Afraid of something, someone, a narrative she'd absorbed from somewhere that made her see danger where there was none. And that was, somehow, even more depressing than if she'd simply been a terrible person. End part 1. Part 2, the aftermath. The news about Christine's behavior spread through Elevate Fitness like a contagion, but not in the way Maya might have hoped. Yes, Derek had suspended her membership pending a formal investigation. Yes, multiple witnesses had corroborated Maya's account. Yes, the gym had sent out a statement about their zero-tolerance policy for discriminatory behavior. But on social media, a different narrative was emerging. It started with a single post on a neighborhood Facebook group, something about how personal trainers these days are too touchy and don't respect personal space, carefully worded to avoid directly nomming anyone or saying anything that couldn't be defended as opinion. Within hours, there were responses. Then a comment about how things used to be and what you could talk about openly before people got so sensitive. Then someone linking a news article from 5 years ago about a trainer in Manhattan who'd been accused of inappropriate contact. By Thursday, just one day after the incident, Christine had created a narrative that she was the victim. In a post on the gym's Google business page, she'd written, "I felt uncomfortable and took appropriate steps to ensure safety. I was attacked and publicly shamed for expressing legitimate concerns. This gym has a hostile culture toward members who speak up." The reviews started rolling in. 1 star, 2 stars, comments from people who'd never set foot in the gym supporting Christine's version of events. Other gym members, the type who like to stir up drama online, began flooding the comments section with arguments. It was a feeding frenzy, the kind of thing that social media weaponized in seconds. Maya's phone had been ringing all Thursday morning. First, a reporter from a local news station. Someone must have tipped them off. She didn't take the interview. Then her mother, who'd somehow already heard about the situation through mutual friends and was furious. Then her best friend Keisha, who wanted to organize a show of support at the gym, which Maya immediately shut down because the last thing she needed was more visibility, more discussion, more fuel for the fire. She called in sick to work on Friday, something she'd never done before. She couldn't face the gym, couldn't face being stared at or talked about or having to defend herself to people who weren't even involved. Derek texted her, "Don't let this push you out. You're not the one who did anything wrong." But Maya was starting to understand something that Derek, with the best of intentions, didn't fully grasp. Being in the right wasn't always enough to protect you. The damage had already been done, not to her reputation professionally, but to her sense of safety in a space that had been her sanctuary. It was Saturday morning when her friend Keisha showed up at her apartment with coffee and a determined expression. "We're going to the gym," Keisha announced, setting down the coffee on Maya's kitchen counter. "I'm not ready," Maya said immediately. She was still in bed, despite it being past 9 in the morning. Sleep had been difficult all week, her mind churning through the incident on repeat, variations of it, hypotheticals, worst-case scenarios. "Good," Keisha said, plopping down on the edge of the bed. "Because ready isn't a prerequisite for doing the hard thing. You're going to go in there, head held high, and you're going to train your clients like you always do. You're going to prove, by existing and doing your job, that what happened doesn't define your right to be there." Keisha had always been like this, forceful in her optimism, stubborn in her refusal to let Maya spiral into self-doubt. They'd met at Howard University and had been tight ever since, the kind of friendship that didn't require constant communication to stay solid. Keisha was a social worker, and she had this way of cutting through emotional fog with pure clarity. "What if people are weird?" Maya asked quietly. "Some will be," Keisha said, not bothering with false reassurance. "Some will probably post about it online. Someone might even say something to your face, and you're going to handle it with the same professionalism you handle everything else, because you're not the one who behaved badly." Maya got up. She showered, did her hair, dressed in her gym clothes, workout leggings, and an Elevate Fitness tank top, a small act of defiance. Keisha drove her, and they didn't talk much on the way. When they arrived, though, Maya's hands were shaking. The gym was moderately busy for a Saturday morning. Some familiar faces, some newer ones. Maya stepped inside and immediately felt the attention shift. She was being watched, assessed, judged. She kept her head up and went straight to her first client, a woman named Patricia, 58, lawyer, training for her first marathon. "Hey, Patricia," Maya said, pulling up her training notes on her tablet. "How are you feeling today?" Patricia's face broke into a warm smile, genuine, no hesitation. "I was hoping you'd be here. Derek told me what happened, and I want you to know I think it's disgusting. Any idiot can see you're one of the most professional, knowledgeable trainers in this gym. That woman is a bitch." Maya felt something in her chest ease slightly. "Thanks. Let's focus on your training today, though. How's the knee?" They worked through Patricia's session, a mix of strength and cardio designed to build her endurance. Despite her initial anxiety, Maya fell into her rhythm. This was her domain. These were her skills. No amount of social media drama could take that away. Between clients, she saw Marcus. He was doing some warm-up stretches, and when he spotted her, he waved her over. "I've been thinking about what happened," Marcus said, his voice low. "And I've been angry, not at you, never at you. But I've been angry at that woman and angry at the fact that you even have to deal with this kind of nonsense. So I did something." He pulled out his phone and showed her a review he'd posted on Google. It was long, detailed, thoughtful. He talked about his experience with Maya, the improvements in his strength and mobility, the professionalism she brought to every session. He mentioned the incident directly, calling out Christine's behavior for what it was. And at the end, he'd written, "As a 73-year-old white man, I'm ashamed that someone who looks like me felt comfortable making these accusations." Maya is an exceptional trainer and an even better human being. If you're hesitating about working with her because of what happened, you should be ashamed of yourself too. Maya read it twice. She felt tears prickling the back of her eyes but blinked them away. "Marcus, you didn't have to." "I know I didn't have to," Marcus said, cutting her off. "I wanted to. It's the right thing to do, and I'm tired of living in a world where the right thing feels optional. So there." That afternoon, 3 more of her regular clients posted their own reviews, not because Keisha had asked them to, but because they'd seen what Marcus had done and felt moved to do the same. Derek sent her a message. "The tide is turning. Keep your head up." But Maya knew something that Derek probably didn't. The initial incident and Christine's accusations would fade. This moment of support would peak and then diminish. In a week or two, the social media attention would move on to the next outrage. Christine would either slink away quietly or find some other gym, some other grievance. What wouldn't fade, though, was the feeling. The way Maya had felt when Christine pointed that phone at her. The implication, swift and sharp, that she was something to be feared or monitored or protected against. That moment had created a hairline fracture in her sense of safety, and she didn't know if that could be fully repaired. She pushed through Saturday's sessions, and by the time her last client left, she was exhausted in a way that went beyond the physical. Keisha had waited for her in the lounge, reading a book, patient and present. "You did good," Keisha said as they walked to the car. "Yeah," Maya said, "but I'm tired, Keisha, not just today tired. I'm tired of having to prove I belong in spaces. I'm tired of people's automatic suspicion. I'm tired of being careful with how I move my body, how I speak, how I position myself so no one gets the wrong idea." "I know," Keisha said, and she did. She'd had her own version of this conversation 100 times with her own clients, people navigating a world that wasn't designed with them in mind. That evening, Maya got a call from Derek. She almost didn't answer, but she did. "I need to talk to you about something," Derek said without preamble. "Christine's threatening to sue. She says the gym defamed her by suspending her membership, and she's claiming the public accusations against her have caused emotional distress." Maya's stomach dropped. "What? That's insane. She's the one who—" "I know," Derek interrupted. "And I'm not worried about her case legally. We have documentation, witnesses, the whole thing, but Maya, you should know this is coming. There might be legal documents headed your way, and you might want to talk to someone about it. I'll cover any costs for that." After she hung up, Maya sat in the dark of her apartment, the city noise filtering through her windows. The city was alive around her, millions of people going about their lives, most of them not thinking about anything like what she was going through. Some of them, she knew, would read about this situation if it became news and make immediate assumptions based on whatever narrative they encountered first. She thought about Christine, about what had driven her to that moment. Fear, definitely, but fear of what specifically? The way Maya had touched Marcus? Or the way a black woman had been comfortable enough to correct a white man in front of others? Or something deeper, something about the world changing faster than Christine could adjust to? It didn't excuse the behavior, but understanding it made it somehow harder because it meant Christine wasn't a villain in a story. She was a person with her own fears and insecurities, the way everyone was. Monday morning, Derek called an all-hands meeting. The gym staff, trainers, front desk, cleaning crew gathered in the small conference room on the second floor. Derek looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept well in days. Maybe he hadn't. "I want to be transparent about what's happening," Derek began, standing at the head of the table. "Christine Ashford's attorney has sent us a formal complaint alleging defamation, emotional distress, and discrimination based on her membership suspension. This is now a legal matter. Our insurance company is involved, and we're cooperating fully with their legal team." Maya felt Keisha's supportive text come through at that moment. "Thinking of you, you've got this." "That said," Derek continued, "I want every single person in this room to understand that we stand by our decision and by our staff. Maya did nothing wrong. The witnesses were credible and consistent, and frankly, Christine's behavior violated our community standards. We would do the same thing again." It was a good statement. It should have made Maya feel protected, supported. But what she felt instead was the weight of institutional machinery, legal systems, insurance companies, procedures, all grinding into motion around her like she was caught in gears. The meeting ended, and Derek pulled Maya aside. "You need a lawyer," he said bluntly. "Even though this isn't your lawsuit, you might be named in it, and you need someone in your corner." "I can't afford," Maya started, but Derek shook his head. "Insurance covers some of it, but honestly, you should probably consult with someone on your own, someone who can represent your interests independent of the gym. I can recommend someone. She's good." That afternoon, Maya found herself in the office of Keisha's cousin's college roommate's husband, a chain of connection that felt both too random and absolutely necessary. The lawyer's name was Diane Washington, and she was a black woman in her 50s with steel-gray locks and an expression that suggested she'd seen every variety of human nonsense this world could offer. "Walk me through what happened," Diane said, settling behind her desk with a legal pad. "Everything, not what someone told you, not your interpretation, the facts as you observed them." Maya did. She went through it chronologically, carefully, trying not to inject emotion into the facts, though emotion was inseparable from the experience. Diane listened without interrupting, making notes. When Maya finished, Diane set down her pen and folded her hands on her desk. "Here's what I'm seeing," Diane said. "This woman made an accusation that you were engaging in inappropriate contact with a client. That accusation is not supported by any evidence. The client disputes it. Multiple witnesses dispute it. Your professional credentials are solid. Your track record is clean. From a legal standpoint, her case is weak." "So she won't win?" Maya felt a small surge of hope. "I didn't say that," Diane said carefully. "Winning or losing isn't always about who's right. It's about what happens in the courtroom, how a judge or jury perceives things, what narrative gets told most effectively. But here's what I can tell you, we have a very good defense, and we'll make sure your defense is airtight." "What about the social media stuff?" Maya asked. "The reviews, the posts, people talking about it online." "That's trickier," Diane admitted. "But ultimately, reviews are opinions. As long as no one has made objectively false statements presented as fact, there's not much that can be done. The internet is a messy place, and unfortunately, you have to learn to navigate it." Over the following weeks, Maya did navigate it. She found herself checking her phone compulsively, scrolling through Google reviews, seeing the mixture of support and criticism, trying not to read too much into the comment sections. This was the modern punishment, she realized. Not just being accused, but having to exist in a space where your accuser could shape a narrative through the algorithms of social media. She also found herself becoming more careful at the gym, not in a way that changed her actual behavior. She was still professional, still appropriately hands-on when it came to spotting and form correction. But she was aware of it now in a way she hadn't been before. She would think, before touching a client's shoulder, about how it might look. She would position herself deliberately in her client's sightlines so there could be no question about where her hands were or what she was doing. This hypervigilance was exhausting in a way that the actual work of training wasn't. It was about 3 weeks into the ordeal when Diane called with an update. I had a conversation with Christine's attorney, Diane said. Off the record, they're looking to settle. What does that mean? Maya asked, though she had a sense of what it meant. It means they know their case is weak, and they're looking for a way to make this go away. They want to negotiate, probably a settlement amount plus a non-disparagement clause, which means neither side speaks publicly about the incident. How much? Maya asked. That depends on how we negotiate, but I'd estimate somewhere in the range of $5,000 to $15,000. It sounded like a lot of money and also like nothing. A settlement would mean it was over, which was appealing. But it would also mean accepting Christine's narrative in some way, accepting that there was some amount of money that made the accusation acceptable, even if it wasn't provable. What do you recommend? Maya asked Diane. Personally, I'd fight it. You're in the right. Your case is strong. But I recognize that trials are expensive, emotionally draining, and you can't predict how a jury will react. So I understand if you want to settle just to make it go away. That's not a weakness, that's just being practical. Maya said she'd think about it, but there wasn't really much thinking to do. She knew that settling wouldn't make it go away, not in the way that mattered. It would just shift the narrative slightly. She settled could be heard as she agreed it was somewhat reasonable, or she wanted it to just go away, depending on who was telling the story. The next morning, she went to the gym for her early shift. She found Marcus already there, warming up for their session, and she suddenly made a decision. I have something I need to ask you, Maya said after they'd gone through his warm-up. And it's okay if the answer is no, but I need to ask anyway. Anything, Marcus said. Would you be willing to testify? If this goes to trial, would you be willing to testify about what happened that day, about our professional relationship? Marcus didn't hesitate. I already told you I would. Yes, absolutely. I think it's important. Even if it gets ugly. Even if her lawyers try to suggest something weird is going on. Especially then, Marcus said firmly, because the truth is important, and I'm tired of letting lies stand just because they're uncomfortable to fight. That conversation stayed with Maya all day. It made the whole thing feel less like a legal abstraction and more like what it actually was. A situation where real people had to step up and tell the truth, publicly, with the risk that they'd be attacked or questioned or misunderstood for doing so. She told Diane she wanted to fight it. Diane was quiet for a moment. Okay, she said finally, then we fight it and we're going to win. The deposition took place on a gray Wednesday in early December, 6 weeks after the original incident. Maya sat in a law office in Lower Manhattan with Diane at her side, across a table from Christine and her attorney, a tall man named Robert Hendricks who had the kind of polished veneer that suggested he'd spent his entire career protecting people like Christine. Christine looked worse than she had at the gym. Her face had lost some of its tautness, and there were dark circles under her eyes. She was wearing a conservative blue dress instead of designer workout clothes, the costume of a victim rather than an aggressor. It was, Maya understood, an intentional choice. Everything about this performance was intentional. Ms. Maya Thomas, Hendricks began, because he didn't yet know her well enough to use her first name casually. Can you describe your professional qualifications? Diane had prepared her for this, so Maya went through her credentials. Her certification through the National Academy of Sports Medicine, her specialization in strength training and mobility, her track record at Elevate Fitness, her client testimonials. Hendricks listened, made notes, and waited until she finished to start his real questions. Is it common practice in your profession to make physical contact with clients without explicit verbal consent? Hendricks asked. It depends on the context, Maya said carefully. When spotting someone on a lift, there's an implied consent because that's part of the service. If I need to make an adjustment to their form, I usually give verbal cues first, but sometimes light touch is necessary to help someone understand what position we're targeting. And on the morning in question, did you have explicit verbal consent from Mr. Williams before you made contact? I positioned myself to spot him and made a verbal cue. He acknowledged it. That's standard. But you didn't ask permission before touching him. I didn't ask for permission to spot him, no. That's not how spotting works. You can't spot someone safely from 6 feet away. Hendricks made a note. Did any member of the gym staff inform you that Christine Ashford had expressed concerns about your behavior? No. Did Derek, the gym owner, ever discuss this incident with you before suspending Ms. Ashford's membership? He asked what happened. I explained. He made a decision. What decision did he make? To suspend her membership pending investigation. And do you believe your account of events had an influence on that decision? Diane interjected at that point. That's asking for speculation about Mr. Johnson's subjective reasoning, which is outside the scope of this deposition. My client can't speak to what influenced his decision. Hendricks nodded, accepting the objection, and moved on. The deposition lasted 4 hours. He asked the same questions in different ways, trying to find inconsistencies. He asked about her relationship with Marcus. Was it ever social outside the gym context? Had she ever discussed personal matters with him? Had he ever invited her anywhere? He invited me to his daughter's birthday party, Maya said carefully. As a client acknowledging someone who'd helped him, I declined because it would have been inappropriate to socialize with clients outside the professional context. Why would it be inappropriate? Hendricks asked. Because it would blur professional boundaries. But you were willing to physically touch him without explicit permission. Spotting during a bench press is not comparable to socializing outside the gym. One is a necessary part of the professional service I provide. The other would be outside that service context. Back and forth, around and around, each question designed to plant doubt, to suggest that maybe, just maybe, something inappropriate had been happening. And the worst part was that Hendricks never said anything explicitly slanderous. He didn't accuse her of anything directly. He just asked questions in a way that implied there was something suspicious to uncover. By the end of the deposition, Maya's head was pounding and her jaw was sore from clenching it. Diane put a hand on her back as they packed up. You did well, Diane said once they were in the hallway. Better than most people do in that situation. You stayed calm, you didn't over-explain, you didn't get defensive. I felt like he was trying to trick me, Maya said. He was, Diane said. That's his job, but you didn't let him, so that's good. 2 weeks later, Christine gave her deposition. Maya was there for it, along with Diane. The difference between Maya's testimony and Christine's became immediately apparent. Christine was emotional. She talked about how violated she'd felt, how frightened she'd been, how she was just trying to protect someone who couldn't protect himself. When Diane asked her to provide specific evidence that something inappropriate had occurred, Christine's answers became vaguer. You took pictures, Diane said. Can you describe them for us? They were of them together. Her hand was on his back. His back, while she was spotting him on the bench press. Yes, but... And in your 20 years as a member of various fitness facilities, have you never seen trainers make contact with clients during spotting? Well, yes, but... But what? It seemed different. How? Christine couldn't articulate it. The more Diane questioned her, the more it became clear that Christine's fear hadn't been based on anything concrete. It had been based on an assumption, a reading of a situation through a lens of fear or prejudice or both. When it was over, Diane and Maya stood outside the courthouse. I think we win this, Diane said. Not because she's a bad person, but because the law requires evidence and she doesn't have any. But even as Diane said it, Maya understood that winning in this context was complicated. Even if the case was dismissed or decided in her favor, the damage to her reputation was already done. There were still negative reviews on the gym's page. There were still people who believed Christine's version of events based on what they'd read online. There was still that moment when she'd been accused publicly in front of witnesses, and no verdict was going to undo that. The court case itself wouldn't be scheduled for months. So Maya had to exist in this liminal space, neither vindicated nor condemned, just suspended in the uncertainty of litigation. She threw herself into her training. She took on 3 new clients. She updated her certifications. She did everything she could to demonstrate through action that she was a consummate professional. And if some part of her was doing it partly for an imagined jury, partly for the public record, partly to prove to everyone who'd ever doubted her, well, at least she was still doing the work. One afternoon between clients, she sat in the gym office and pulled up the reviews page again. This time, though, she did something different. Instead of reading the negative reviews, she scrolled to the positive ones. There were dozens of them now, clients talking about their progress, their transformation, how much Maya had meant to them. One client, a woman named Jennifer, had written, Maya changed my life, not just my fitness, but my confidence. She believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. The fact that she even had to defend herself against these ridiculous accusations makes me angry on her behalf. If you're considering training with her, do it. She's the best. Maya read that review 3 times, and something shifted inside her, not fully healed but incrementally restored. She wasn't the story that Christine had created. She was also the trainer that Marcus and Patricia and Jennifer and a dozen others had experienced. Both things could be true, that she'd been accused falsely and that she was genuinely good at what November turned into December, and the legal machinery continued its slow grinding. Diane kept her updated on developments, depositions from other gym members, expert witnesses being lined up, the discovery process yielding documents that only further demonstrated the weakness of Christine's case. But litigation time moved differently than real time. What felt urgent to Maya felt routine to the lawyers. The gym continued to operate around the unresolved tension. Derek had made the gym's position clear, but there was still a faction of members who were either uncertain or actively sympathetic to Christine's narrative. An online petition had been created, Support Christine Ashford and Safe Spaces in Fitness, and it had gathered 300 signatures from people who had never met anyone involved. Maya's solution was to become more visible, more present, more undeniably professional. She started offering free form check sessions on Saturday mornings. She began mentoring the gym's newer trainer, a young woman named Jasmine. She increased her client load until she was booked solid, every hour accounted for. It was in this intensity that she received a phone call that changed everything. It was a Thursday, and she was between clients. Diane's voice on the other end sounded unusual, carefully controlled, but with an undercurrent of something else. "We have a development," Diane said. "I need you to meet me at my office. Can you come now?" Maya's stomach dropped. What happened? "Just come," Diane said, "and bring a friend if you want. You might want someone there." 30 minutes later, Maya and Keisha sat in Diane's office. Diane had a laptop in front of her, and her expression was complicated, something between vindication and sadness. "Christine's attorney contacted me," Diane began. "They've uncovered something that they felt obligated to disclose to me, even though it weakens their case considerably." "What?" Maya asked. Diane turned her laptop around. On the screen was a video file dated from the morning of the incident. "Christine's phone was set to auto-backup to her cloud storage," Diane explained. "When our forensic team reviewed her devices as part of discovery, we found this video. Apparently, she filmed the encounter, not just still photos, video." She pressed play. The video started with Christine's perspective, looking toward the bench press area. The audio was fuzzy, but you could hear gym sounds, weights, occasional voices. Then you could see Marcus on the bench doing his reps. And you could see Maya positioned to spot him, her hands ready but not touching him until he started to lower the weight, and she made light contact with his upper back to guide the bar safely down. "Elbows wider," Maya's voice came through clearly on the video. Marcus adjusted and they continued through the set. It was textbook spotting, professional, appropriate, competent. The video showed exactly what Maya had said happened. Nothing more, nothing less. "When did they find this?" Maya asked. "This morning. Their IT team was conducting additional discovery, and they found it buried in her cloud. When they reviewed it, they realized it completely exonerates you. It shows exactly what you described with zero ambiguity." "So what happens now?" Keisha asked. "Now," Diane said, "they contact us and suggest that maybe, just maybe, their client wants to drop this whole case. Because walking into a courtroom with this video would be disastrous for her case. It's not just weak, it's actively damaging." "She was recording the whole time." Maya felt something twist in her chest. "She was recording me, and she knew exactly what she recorded, and she proceeded with the lawsuit anyway." "Yes," Diane said simply. The implication hung in the air. Christine hadn't been a frightened person acting on honest misunderstanding. She deliberately recorded Maya, knew what the recording showed, and had then tried to pursue legal action anyway. She'd bet on the possibility that her narrative would be believed despite contradicting evidence. "I recommend we countersue," Diane said, "for malicious prosecution, defamation, intentional emotional distress. We have this video as evidence that she knew her allegations were false and proceeded anyway." Maya felt Keisha's hand on her back. "What do you want to do?" Keisha asked quietly. Maya sat with that question. For weeks, she'd been thinking about this as a legal problem, something to be solved through courtrooms and documents and testimony. But now that she held the thing that would definitively prove her right, she found herself considering something else entirely. "Can I talk to you alone?" Maya asked Diane. Keisha left, and Maya waited until the door was closed. "What would countersuing accomplish?" Maya asked. "Financially, potentially a significant settlement. Legally, vindication, publicly. It would demonstrate that you're not someone who can be bullied. It would also mean months more of litigation, more depositions, more of my life tied up in this." "Yes," Diane said, "it would. And even if I win big, what does that change? Christine still made the accusation. It's still out there online. There's still a narrative that exists independent of what a courtroom decides." Diane was quiet. She'd been a lawyer for 25 years, and she knew that what Maya was saying was true. "What are you thinking?" Diane asked. "I'm thinking that I want her to drop it," Maya said. "And I want that on the record. I want there to be a public statement from her that she was mistaken, that the video shows nothing inappropriate, that she's withdrawing her allegations. And if she won't do that, then yes, we go after her. But if the choice is just between settling quietly and fighting, I choose the fight, but the fight is for clarity, not for money." Diane smiled, not a big smile, but a real one. "That's a good instinct. Let me see what we can negotiate." The call came back the next morning. Christine's attorney had instructed her to issue a formal statement. Diane read it to Maya over the phone. "I, Christine Ashford, wish to publicly acknowledge that my allegations against Ms. Maya Thomas were made in error. Upon further reflection and review of video evidence from the date in question, I have determined that Ms. Thomas was performing her professional duties as a personal trainer in an appropriate manner. I withdraw all allegations of improper conduct and apologize for any harm my actions may have caused. I am additionally requesting the immediate dismissal of all legal claims against Ms. Thomas and Elevate Fitness. It wasn't perfect. It was lawyered to hell, and it was written in that stiff, formal language that made it sound like someone reading a ransom note. But it was there. On the record, public retraction. "There's more," Diane said. Her attorney reached out to Derek directly. She's requesting not to renew her membership and is asking if there's anything she can do to mitigate the damage to her reputation. "What did you tell him to say?" Maya asked. "I told him to say that her membership request was accepted and that the situation has been resolved. I didn't tell him to be kind, but I also didn't tell him to be cruel." Maya found herself thinking about Christine for the first time without anger. Instead, she felt something closer to pity. Christine had bet on a narrative, on the assumption that a woman who looked like Maya would be assumed to be a certain way, and she'd lost. She'd been forced to publicly retract her accusations. She'd probably face social consequences in her own circles for being the kind of person who'd make false allegations. But she'd also learned something, which was that the world had changed enough that false accusations against women of color could be disproven with video evidence and public pushback. That evening, Derek called. "I wanted you to hear it from me," he said. "Christine is dropping her membership and she's not renewing, and more than that, she's requesting she be formally banned from the gym." "She's requesting to be banned?" Maya asked, surprised. "According to her attorney, she doesn't feel comfortable at Elevate Fitness anymore. But between you and me, I think it's because she knows how everyone here feels about her now." The next day, Maya came into the gym to find a bottle of champagne sitting on her desk in the office, with a note from Derek. "You did good, Maya, all of it. Welcome back." That Saturday, Marcus came in for his session, and he hugged her before they started training. The kind of hug that said, "I'm proud of you, and also I stood with you, and I knew you were right all along." "What's next?" Marcus asked as they warmed up. "What do you mean?" Maya asked. "For you, for your career, are you staying at the gym?" Maya considered the question. A few weeks ago, the answer would have been complicated. The gym had been her sanctuary, and it had been tainted by what happened. Part of her wanted to leave, to find a fresh start somewhere new where she didn't carry this history. But another part of her understood that running wouldn't solve anything. And more than that, she realized she still loved the gym, still loved the work, still felt connected to the community she'd built. "I think I'm staying," Maya said. "But I'm thinking about other things too, maybe getting into coaching, training trainers the way Derek trained me, sharing what I know." "I think that's perfect," Marcus said. Over the following weeks, the narrative shifted. The negative reviews didn't disappear. Nothing erases things from the internet entirely. But they were buried under the new reviews, the testimonials, the conversation about how Maya had navigated an impossible situation with professionalism and grace. The petition that had been created in support of Christine quietly lost momentum and eventually disappeared. And slowly, so slowly that Maya almost didn't notice it happening, things returned to normal. Not exactly normal. The incident had happened, and no amount of vindication could fully erase that moment of public accusation. But something close to normal, a new equilibrium. It was about 3 weeks after Christine dropped the case that Diane called with a final update. "I wanted to be the one to tell you," Diane said. "Christine filed a request with her credit card company to remove the charges for her gym membership retroactively, trying to recover the last few months of fees. Derek pushed back and provided all her membership documentation, showing that she used the facilities regularly. The credit card company sided with the gym." "Why are you telling me this?" Maya asked. "Because it means she tried one last thing in private to make this go away or shift it in her favor," Diane said. "And it didn't work. Everything she tried, the public accusation, the lawsuit, the private request, it all came to nothing, or worse, it came back on her. And I want you to understand that you're the one who survived this. You won. Not just legally, but actually." The Elevate Fitness expansion opened on a warm August afternoon. Derek had taken the space next door and converted it into additional training areas, a rehabilitation section, and a small office suite. On the door of the largest office, a new plaque had been installed. "Maya Thomas, Senior Trainer and COACHING Director." Maya stood in her office looking out at the new space. It still smelled like fresh paint and construction dust. Her desk was organized but not yet personalized. She'd bring photos, maybe a motivational quote or two, nothing too much. Keisha had come to the opening event, along with Marcus, Patricia, Jennifer, and about 100 other people who wanted to celebrate what Elevate Fitness had become. Derek had given a speech about growth and resilience and the importance of building community. No one mentioned Christine or the accusations or any of the drama that had preceded this moment. That was the thing about vindication. It eventually became history, a chapter that was finished and filed away. After the event, Maya was locking up when her phone buzzed. It was a DM from an Instagram account she didn't recognize. She almost deleted it, but something made her open it. The message was from Christine, not the formal lawyered statement, an actual message. "I've been wanting to say this directly, and I'm not sure if it's appropriate or if you even want to hear from me. But I've spent the last 9 months thinking about what I did, and I owe you a real apology. Not a legal one, a real one. I was afraid, and I let that fear make me do something terrible. I was afraid of things I didn't understand, and instead of questioning that fear, I acted on it. What I did to you was wrong, and I'm sorry. I hope you can forgive me, even if I wouldn't blame you if you couldn't." Maya read it twice. Then she put her phone away without responding. She wasn't ready for that conversation, might never be ready for it. Forgiveness was complicated. It wasn't something you could be demanded into, and it wasn't something you could give just because someone asked. But she also understood that Christine's apology, however it came, was something Maya didn't need anymore. She'd already moved past the need for Christine's approval or redemption or absolution. She'd taken what happened and transformed it into something else: growth, strength, clarity. That was the real victory. As she walked out into the warm August evening, Marcus was waiting for her on the sidewalk. "Couldn't leave without saying congrats," Marcus said, pulling her into a hug. "This is big, Maya, this is really big." "Thanks for being here," Maya said, "for being there during all of it." "Always," Marcus said. "And hey, now that you're the coaching director, you have to let me help you recruit. I know at least 5 people who need your training." They walked together toward the subway, and Maya felt something settle in her chest. It wasn't peace, exactly. It was something more like acceptance that people would sometimes be afraid of her for reasons that had nothing to do with who she actually was. Acceptance that the work of being in spaces, of claiming her right to exist in them professionally and confidently, would probably always require some effort. But it was work that was worth doing, not just for herself, but for the next Maya who would walk into a space and wonder if she had the right to be there. Because if there was one thing this entire ordeal had taught her, it was that being right wasn't the same as being safe, but being brave was something that could bridge the gap. She was brave, she had proven that, and she would keep proving it every single day by showing up and doing the work.